congratulations, third grade class. Miss Johnson has won the Read to Success. Did you get an email, Miss Johnson? You want to tell them what your email said you got?
$30 gift certificate, and I chose Walmart because we're going to do a pizza party and breakfast.
Awesome. Yes. She got a gift certificate, and I have a package coming so that her students can get some decals and things, but her students read more. And as if you look at the data, the students who read the most and achieve 3,000 are also the same students that go up in Lexile. Just saying, and $30. Okay, I have one other award. This is pretty fitting. It's been here for a while. It's taken me a while to get this out. But our tag by the superintendent goes to Miss Johnson. It's because you're a great teacher, but it's not just because you're a great teacher, which I think is really good about being tagged by the superintendent. It's because you help the climate at the school, and it makes other people feel good. Here's your own signed copy from the superintendent. It's not a pink slip. So congratulations. Both of those things in one day. Keitha has been planning, help plan with Sunny via email. I sent her back home today. She really didn't need to be here, but Tara said she would be willing to help with this, so I'm going to turn it over to them. Take the stage.
So Keith and I attended the administrative conference this summer, and one of the trainings that we received was the question formulation training. And through the training, we looked at each other and would say, wow, this is awesome. It's easy, it's simple, and it's powerful. And then when we returned, Tara then was sharing how over the summer she read the book and she went through a training herself. So we all kind of got together and were like, well, I think it would be great for us to share with the staff. So. So real quick, what we believe is that, and I want you to quickly read it, is that all students should learn and formulate their own question, and that is the ultimate goal. Through this strategy that students will develop their own questions. The good thing about it is that all teachers can easily teach this skill as part of your regular practice. It's not something that's an addition to, it's not another thing, it's not something that should take a long time. So that's why we liked it.
One of the things I noticed when I took the training, I was actually reading the book, and at first, first impression is, oh my goodness, how much time is this going to take? And, how easy is it to execute? And as I started reading the book and I actually started putting it into practice and trying some of the steps myself, I could see that this was something that could be easily implemented. And it would not, once you have developed a little bit of practice with it, it should not take any more time to plan.
Okay, so in looking at the context 2020 also, is how will this session help the participants, engage students in the learning process? I want you to quickly kind of read those two bullets.
The bottom one says, by having students participate in the question formulation technique, teachers are implementing an innovative practice that maximizes rigor and meaningful engagement.
Now, the good thing about this strategy is that students will develop their own questions, and therefore they're going to own it. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Now, so in question formulation technique, it's very simple. There are 7 steps, and we're going to go through the steps today. You're the facilitator, and basically the students will be asking questions. The good thing about it is that they will use the process, they will think more deeply, and they're going to refine their questions, and then they're going to prioritize their questions. Basically, through the process, there's 3 different thinking skills they will do. One is they're going to do divergent thinking. Then the next series of steps will lead them into a convergent thinking, and then at the end, there's going to be a metacognitive piece to it.
in those 3 steps, I just wanted to add, when they actually are formulating their questions, that's the divergent, that's their broader thinking, that's when they're being creative. And then as they start to really kind of analyze and assess those questions, and we're trying to develop what our purpose is for those questions, that's when it becomes convergent. They start to become a little bit more, well, it's those higher thinking steps that we want, those skills that we want them to have. And then finally, they're going to reflect on them and think about their thinking. That's when it becomes metacognitive. So why would I even do this? Well, there are a lot of different purposes for developing these questions, for having them develop their own questions. And it might be that, are you going to have them do some research? Are they going to write an essay? Are you just trying to introduce the topic? Is this just going to be used as a hook to give them a schema, something that they can attach this new information to? There are so many different ways that you can use the question once it's formulated.
So here are our 7 steps. And the first step is the rules. You're going to mention the rules to the students, and the big idea is they have to follow those rules. You do not use a question focus as, you don't start with a question, and I'm going to kind of walk you through it, but the rule is you can't answer questions that they ask you. You have to let them go through the process, okay? The first 3 are divergent thinking pieces. The second part is what we call a question focus or a cue focus, and we're going to go each step at a time. I just want to briefly introduce it to you. Then comes the third part, is where they're going to actually produce their question based on cue focus. Then these 3 are your convergent pieces, where they're categorizing their questions, they're going to prioritize them, and then what is the next step, which is your ultimate purpose for doing this. And then the last one is the reflection part, which is the metacognitive piece.
Before I go to the next slide, the most important thing is to not skip a step. You always want to follow all 7 steps. Step 1 is to present them with the rules for developing the question. Ask as many questions as you can. They are given a question focus, and we'll explain what a question focus is in a moment and give you some examples. But they start with a question focus, and they start to generate as many questions as they can. They can't stop to discuss them. They can't try to stop and refine them. They don't judge them. There's no discussion. And they have to write it down exactly as it's stated. If anybody makes a statement, it needs to be turned into a question. And then, of course, you have to have one person to take notes. That way you don't have duplicates.
Any questions up to now? Okay, so it's really simple. So what is a cue focus? Cue focus is the part where they're going to focus on their questions, or where they're going to develop their questions out of this piece. So it could be a simple statement. It could be a visual. You could use a picture to develop that cue focus. You could use an oral stat aid to help students generate questions. It's created from the curriculum. So an example might be, if, let's say, we're going to start Revolutionary War, you might use an image of a political cartoon. And that could be your cue focus, where students will develop their questions. You will need to design a cue focus every time you want to use question formulation technique. So you always want to start with a cue focus, because that is the hook, or that is the piece that's going to get them to develop their questions or generate those. It's got to be brief. Your cue focus must be brief. It can't be something really long. And it's got to provoke thinking, lines of thinking, have different possibilities. And it cannot be a question. So you cannot start a cue focus with a question. You can't start with a question, okay?
There are some simple steps for designing your cue focus. First of all, you want to start out with your purpose. You don't want to start with, oh, this is a good picture, let me figure out what I can do with this and turn it into. Instead, start with your purpose and then kind of go backwards. Think about what they're going to do with the questions that they produce. That's going to drive whatever you decide your cue focus is going to be. You can generate several different ideas for a cue focus, and then you're going to compare them to some criteria. There's actually 4 basic criteria. And let me kind of take a look. I have to use my glasses, sorry. Can't go back and forth. Number 1, it can't be a question. Number 2, it needs to stimulate different lines of questions, different lines of thinking. It needs to be simple, something straightforward, and it needs to meet your purpose. So whichever one you generate that meets those criteria the best and best supports your purpose, that's the one you'll choose.
So what we're going to do now is you are going to go through the process yourself. So you're going to need space on your table. There are paper along the wall. What I want you to do is, we're going to show you your Q focus in a minute. One person in your group is going to be the person who's going to take the notes, who's going to write the questions. The purpose behind this is to ensure that questions are not repeated. You're not judging someone's question. You're not going to judge the questions. Just make sure that if it's a statement, if you have a statement, you turn it into a question. There is no such thing as a back question. You just want to write all the questions, as many questions as you can within the 5-minute time that I will give you, okay? So make sure you choose your person. You pick one color. Not two colors. One color, I give you 2 different color markers. There's a purpose behind it. But write one color and then write all your questions on there. So, before you begin, any questions?
Oops, sorry.
Are you good?
What do you want to answer? I don't know what the question is. I don't know.
As soon as you're ready, we'll start. You can't start until I show you a few focus, but we're going to go back and mention your rules.
Okay, so first of all, write down any and all questions. Write them exactly as they're stated. Don't try to revise, don't try to start answering the questions as you go. Don't try to like second guess what you wrote and make it better. Write it exactly as it's stated and try to write and generate as many questions as you can during the allotted time. We're about to show you the Q focus now. Oh, and if anybody makes a statement, do turn it into a question.
I wonder why they're very that says our shot.
Do the great E. coli. The Chipotle service is great. Yes. You know what the headline was? You know what the headline was? It's 120 people sick in Boston area because Boston College students visited the because it was They always had a forfeit lesson. You had to go down to play Providence.
I'm just going to have Are they purple or Farm Workers of America? What's his name?
Are they Italian? Are they from Portland, Oregon?
Are they the California days? That's how I saw it. What is Farm Workers of America? I think that question, yeah. They have fees they're going to everybody has.
Where are they boycotting?
I'm trying to keep us.
I did, Bill. Are you disappointed?
If you don't recognize how advanced we are, it's your fault.
What did you say about California?
Is Caesar Chavez or is
I'm glad you were right.
Okay, time's up. So after you present the Q focus, which was that image, and students have developed their question, then you go to the next step, which is you ask them or discuss the difference between an open question versus a closed question. So just following the process, then what is an open question? That's kind of like where you would answer that. So who wants to answer that one?
An open question? Is that what you said? What's an open
Now, what's
question?
an open-ended question?
A question that can't be answered with a simple yes, no, or a one-word answer. That's the quickest, easiest, most effective way to explain an open question. If you continue, oh.
So then a closed question is? Yes or no. So what you're going to do now is you're going to go back to your questions using a different color marker, and you're going to categorize your questions are either O for open or C for closed. Go ahead.
And furthermore, we have to impress Jill over here. Because yeah, that can't But it's simple. It's a very, yeah, it's a close. It's not very difficult.
What experiences do
you get into? Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the next step will be they put their question, you identify what's open and closed. They categorize. So now you're going to ask them to take one open question and make it a closed question. And then you need to take an open question, a closed question, and make it an open question.
So choose one of each and turn it into the other kind of question.
So turn a closed question.
In this one, what is the variety of grape you boycott?
Or you can say, well, could I do, what's the variety? Does it matter where they are boycotting? No. Wouldn't that change that totally? You would bring up why they were, where they were boycotting and then explain why. I don't know, is that what we're trying to do? Or is it
They just want to
you just do that? Why does it Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, we can do that with any of them. Where are they boycotting?
Or does he like wine?
Yeah.
What flavors of wine?
Well, we said this is an open. final one.
So we can take this one and write it back and say, is he trying
Specifically why
to
they're both having races. Is there one that's-
stop
Well, I think
pesticides from, yes or no?
Are they boycotting for wages?
yeah. That's right, but that question, whatever. I'm tired of seeing this. You just,
You're all under kick.
I tell you what though, I
We could say why that did what it was.
I got 2 boxes of things.
now we're gonna take our, what is he trying to do? Is he trying to protest race?
And why would you believe?
I close my decision.
Is he trying to?
Right.
Is that what you guys think? Is that even, is that what you think pesticides on grapes or?
Well, think about that.
Migrant workers. Which one did you change?
From which they
Right, it will change. I still think it's like I want to use it. That's my grandpa.
I hope you have a chance to change one of each kind.
I got it. And for Christmas, I got
They all
that.
have to.
Let me start listening.
And I'll do it. Okay, so the next step, to me, this is kind of where you're going to take control of what they've done so far. Because as I was doing the training, I thought, well, I don't know what kind of questions they're going to come up with, and who knows if they're going to go where I kind of would like them to go. But really and truly, we want them to own this. And this is where you kind of control the outcome, because this is where you're going to ask them to prioritize the question, and it's going to be based on whatever your purpose is for the Q focus to begin with. So the criteria for prioritizing is, like I said, it's set by you. It's going to depend on whatever it is that you have planned, wherever you want them to go with these questions. And here are some examples of ways that you can have them prioritize them. You can say, hey, choose 3 that interest you, or 3 that you think are most important. Or pick a question that will best help you design your research. Pick a question that will best help you design your experiment. In other words, it needs to be a testable question. That's going to be an a closed-ended question. Which one is going to help you solve a problem? Which one do you need or want to answer first? You're deciding how you want them to prioritize them, and then you give them time to do that. So we're going to ask you right now to choose the question you consider to be the most important.
Everybody's
Three.
choosing
Choose
one.
one or three.
One or three? It says three.
Excuse me, would you please repeat the directions for the hard of hearing?
Are we choosing one or is three most important?
You want to choose?
There can only be one.
It says three on the board.
Choose three, I'm sorry, choose three, but it's not yeah, choose three.
I choose.
So I'm gonna star that one.
What is most important?
Why the rest of it doesn't make a difference.
Not is that important.
We don't know who or why. Doesn't really matter. Except for when Phil goes to the grocery store to make it possible. Except for when Phil goes. So this is for when Terry goes to the store. That's $10. Why don't
We need to add a question. Does a boycott affect my business?
What are some of these? Why is the barefoot wine $40? It used to be $4.
They lost their sanity.
Okay, star the one, star or top one.
Will this boycott affect the supply of the
Will the boycott affect?
No, mine are not. Mine are obvious. You gotta push.
at the hotel? That's a closed question. I don't know why they're coming. Can you go around?
I'm already here.
I'm offended by these questions. Being locked out.
I'm doing the
Firm didn't take break. Okay. Stop whining. Would you stop whining?
I had y'all picked out.
Not all of them got in the bag.
It's not for participation, it's obviously.
Let's not for raise.
Oh, is it for picnic?
Not that
Okay.
That's what I
Okay, so we want to take a moment just to ask you to share. What you'll do is you'll ask your students to share and whatever they chose as their priority questions, and they need to give a rationale. Why did you choose those 3 questions? So we'll just go group to group, and if you'll tell us what 3 questions you chose as your priority questions.
We said, what is wrong with grapes? And then why do the farm workers want to boycott grapes? And then we changed one of our closed questions to an open. How do you turn grapes into wine and raisins?
Okay, and why did you choose those? What's your rationale?
Well, we definitely think it's important to find out why anyone would want to boycott. And then it's very interesting that grapes has such an impact because it's not just a fruit. We use them for lots of different things. Like Tracy brought up the point. She's like, I never would have. Like, I'm like, does he like wine? Why doesn't he think about wine? Why would you do anything to grapes? We're going to drink wine. And Tracy is so healthy and pure, and she's like, my first thought is like, wow, I use grapes, I put that in my kids' snacks all the time. So it's, we think that's interesting because every group would have a different
Okay, first grade.
Okay, the first thing we said is, how will this affect the economy? The boycott. Then we chose, how will a boycott help the farmers? And how will this affect